Greetings to you, Substack subscribers, followers, friends, ADHD adults, loved ones of ADHD adults, appreciators of dialectical behavior therapy, DBT. I'm Scott Spradlin. I'm recording this video in the world headquarters of North Star Therapy, which is the home of Wichita DBT, where we develop and provide Wise Mind for the distracted mind, DBT for ADHD adults. And my wife Mariah and I are also presently co-authors on a forthcoming workbook coming from New Harbinger Publications in 2026, the DBT Skills Workbook for ADHD adults. So you have that to look forward to. We'll post some links for that in case you're interested in looking into that. We welcome lay people, those who have been diagnosed with ADHD who are adults, those who want to learn more about ADHD, loved ones, supporters of friends or family or spouses or adult children who have been diagnosed with ADHD, and also our colleagues in the mental health professions or medical professionals and just anybody who wants to know. We welcome you here. And of course, I'd like to say that if you haven't yet followed this Substack, please hit the follow button at least or subscribe. We have free and paid options for that. And I really appreciate the support for the work we're doing here. Do want to give a shout out to our friend Carrie, who is our first paid subscriber. Thank you for the support. She has very kind words for us, and we still need to post her comments that she shared with us when she made her commitment to support us on a monthly basis. So she's our first paid subscriber here. Really, again, appreciate that. That kind of support will enable us to take more time for ongoing research and development, and down the road to look for perhaps a more polished approach to how we produce our videos and or the podcasts as these go out simultaneously. So for now, thanks for enjoying our very straightforward Substack. And today I wanted to share with you just quickly DBT assumptions for ADHD adults. What I'm going to share with you today are adaptations of what I'm calling classic traditional DBT principles, practices, and taking some of the original works of Dr. Linehan and adapting them somewhat for our adults who seek help in our treatment program for their adult ADHD. And these are assumptions which nobody, you coming into this, by the way, you hear these assumptions. Let's say for a moment you're somebody who you are an adult who meets criteria for ADHD, whether that's a combined type or inattentive mostly or hyperactive. We ask our clients to adopt these assumptions about themselves, at least pragmatically, while they're in the therapy. So even if they don't deeply, deeply, deeply believe these ideas, just to try them out, drive them around a little bit. It's a kind of element of cognitive therapy, perhaps, but it's certainly helpful in terms of kind of rounding out the practitioner's thoughts about their clients and also the ADHD adults, rethinking, if you will, or perhaps reframing their thoughts about themselves and making some shifts even in their identity as adults with ADHD. So I'm gonna share those with you, unpack those a little bit. So again, thanks for tuning in to watch this video, or you're listening on the podcast. And I'm going to try to keep in mind that this will end up on Spotify also and YouTube. So uh, for those who won't see what's happening, I'll try to keep the visuals kind of low right now anyway. So you're not missing much if you're just on the audio podcast. But Wise Mind for the Distracted Mind, assumptions about ADHD adults. Here we go. And I'll be reading this, so yeah, it'll be pretty obvious, right? For those who can see me. But the first assumption that we invite our adults to consider is that ADHD adults are doing the best they can in any given moment. So whatever's happening, late to work, can't find the keys, can't find the strength to put away the pile of laundry on the end of the bed, um, forgetful about coffee dates with friends and so forth. It's the best you can do. I'll put it that way. It's the best they can do. I'll probably use you, they, and so on interchangeably. It's the best they could do in that given moment. And to unpack that a little bit more, that's in consideration of The underlying neurobiology of executive function impairments, mentioned that in the last video, that ADHD represents a constellation of impairments across domains of executive functions, everything from verbal, nonverbal working memory to task initiation and sustaining tasks, and alerting attention, sustaining attention, orienting, reorienting attention, and so on, as well as regulating emotions. So, given the underlying neurobiological challenges that can play havoc with one's attentional processes, which is an entire uh, body uh, process, not just up here in the head, but our entire bodies, but also it's within context, right? Within the context of our environment and the demands that are placed upon us given our present life factors. So, considering all of that and past learning and present skills or deficits in skills at present, that's the best anybody could do. Also, given some of the decisions that were made. And so, even sometimes when folks become more skillful with DBT, learning core mindfulness, emotion regulation, distress tolerance, and so on, there's still situations which are such that they inhibit one's ability to be as skillful as one might be otherwise in a more supportive or understanding environment. So anyway, moving along. So again, just review this one. Number one is ADHD adults are doing the best they can at any given moment. So if you happen to be an ADHD adult, and again, you can't find your keys, or you're looking at that pile of laundry in the end of your bed and you're just beating yourself up, why don't I get it done? Let's just start with this assumption: I am doing the best I can in this moment, or I reflect on a moment earlier today or yesterday or last year. It was the best I could do. Now I'm contending with executive function impairments and perhaps certain skills I need. And then there's some, again, what I'm going to look at, what are the contextual factors that are, either assisting me to be more skillful or inhibiting my ability to become more skillful. The second assumption is ADHD adults want and need to do better to decrease suffering that arises from, and this is kind of clunky, might be revised, unmitigated executive function impairments. Okay, so ADHD adults want to and need to do better to decrease suffering. We could just kind of leave it there. Maybe it'd be the best way to do it and put the rest of that in the sub point. So we all need to do better, work harder, and be more motivated to change is another way to put this. That we want to change our quality of life. That's why we call this wise mind for the distracted mind. That we're going to be leaning into wise mind, the idea of wisdom in the coming entries here, coming videos and so forth. But the idea behind wise mind for distracted mind is not to develop a program that's going to help us to become just more uh, basically, if like get efficient and effective. That's only part of it. That's only part of it. We do have to be efficient in the world, whether we're on agrarian time or modern, digital uh, lifetime, and whatever the calendar and clock is, and whatever the task is that we need to deal with. We have to be at least relatively. We have to be sufficiently efficient in order to be connected with others and have meaningful relationships and to be healthy and to achieve goals that we set for ourselves, be able to set those goals and to act upon ourselves in a way that we can be successful in meeting those goals, right? Okay, so we want to do better. We want to do better. So the fact that you're here, even watching this, listening to this, or when you pick up the workbook and you're reading it, or you go seek a DBT therapist, or perhaps a cognitive behavioral therapist, or other coaching or treatment, it's because you want things aren't working as well for you as you'd like them to. So you want to do better, and so that's an assumption we take. We all want to do better. It's aspirational, as we'll get into. We all want to do better, even if we're not perhaps as clumsy or as deep in suffering as others. Our third assumption is, and I kind of overlapped it already a little bit, is that ADHD adults need to do better, work harder, and be more motivated to change. Hmm. Okay. So sometimes when we share these assumptions with our clients, the first one, when we say ADHD adults are doing the best they can in any given moment, many of our clients will reflect upon that, and then they will share with us that they hear that as a cop out, that they hear that as a, well, I guess I'm making excuses after all, just like my wife or husband or friends or or my employers are telling me this is just these are excuses. You need to grow up, right? Well, see, on the other hand, and this is also touching upon dialectics. There's a lot to cover. That's why there'll be many, many, many videos. Okay. Um, yeah, in that moment, that was the best you could do. Nobody wants to do terrible. Nobody wants to stumble and struggle and fail. And sometimes we trip up and we fall down or we're off path, and then we just get back on path. And on the other hand, if you're worried about really, if you happen to be an ADHD adult and you hear the idea that you're doing the best you can in any given moment, we want you to hear that as acceptance, that's real. I did my best, and now I can get up on my feet and I can get back to doing better. I can learn new skills. I can look at all the things going on in my life, even in a granular level, with some help and some support. Uh, how can I change some of those things so that I can then do better? I want to do better in life. I want to be more on time. I want to be more reliable and so on. And so you're going to have to do a lot of hard work. You have to be willing to do hard work also. So now here's the other side of this. On the one hand, you're doing your best. Now the call is up there. Come do better. Be willing to work. Lean into the difficulties. And you need to be more motivated to change, which is where, by the way, therapy and or coaching comes in handy, because motivation isn't necessarily a ethereal, mysterious gas. And again, that's going to be something we'll talk about down the road. What is motivation? And what we say here is, and I'm just going to read this to you, that an ADHD diagnosis isn't an excuse to live a sloppy life. Instead, it's a signal to take responsibility for your treatment and skill building. So if you're in treatment, we could say even you take responsibility for building a life worth living. For life to get better, you'll have to do better, and you'll have to work harder and be more motivated. Motivation will be up and down. So that's coming. So I'm trying to hold back, which will require honest self-assessment. That's where mindfulness comes in, diligence and accountability, and cheerleading from therapists, other supportive adult family members, and friends to energize you when you are, in fact, discouraged, or you feel like kind of backing off a little bit. So I will add just a real quick tip here. If you are an ADHD adult and you're looking for a way to start doing better, working harder, and be more motivated, like right now, I recommend pay attention to the language that you use about the habits that you want to build or improve upon, or when you're getting feedback from therapist or coach or loved one who says, hey, you ought to try X, Y, or Z, and it may actually be a really great idea. When maybe you say something to the effect of, yeah, I really should do that. That's a really great idea. Uh, just pause there for a moment and experiment with replacing I should do that with, oh, I will do that. I mean, if it's a good idea, you don't have to do everything everybody tells you to do. But if it's something that makes sense for you to do this, for instance, I should use my day planner every day. Oh, yeah, that's a really good idea. Yeah. Just say to yourself at least, and then you got to write it down, but at least start by changing the language of like, I will use my day planner today, right now. In fact, I'm going to use it. It's Tuesday. The day of recording this video, it's a Tuesday. Well, I don't have to wait till next Monday. I don't have to wait till New Year's Eve. But today's a great day to take action, and we can do some of that with the language that we use to be more specific. Uh, we tend to be more likely than to follow through, right? So, and these are just ways you can do that. But back to the assumptions again: doing the best that you can. You want to do better. You're going to have to do better. Work harder. Be more motivated to change. Our fourth assumption is that ADHD adults may not have caused all of their own problems, but they're going to have to solve them anyway. And this one here is a little more uh, popular among our clients, with our traditional DBT clients, but with our ADHD clients also, that it's a uh, a recognition that we often have problems in our lives, particularly as we get into adulthood, where uh, a roommate maybe didn't pay their portion of rent, or your name is on the utility bill or the internet service, but they didn't pay that, or they move out suddenly and you're stuck with all of that. There's no way to get them to pay for that. That's a problem that you have to solve, uh, even if you're being responsible for that, right? So you have to take care of that. And that's just one kind of maybe, well, it's not a light example if you're in it. Um, but you're still going to have to work on changing your own behavior. And if you're undertaking modified dialectic behavior therapy, DBT, you'll have to learn to change these behaviors with your new DBT skills and also adapting your environment with scaffolding and externalizing techniques to support your move toward your goals, toward your life worth living, toward your wise life. Um, and you will have to take care of some of these problems. Sometimes folks are strapped with problems that they often feel resentful about. And so they sit on their hands. They become what we call willful. And they're like, no, I'm not going to, I shouldn't have to pay that internet bill or that utility because they scrimped out on their amount. In the meantime, the lights get turned off or it gets submitted to a credit reporting agency. So you're hurting yourself, not being effective. So this is what we're looking at here. It's like, hey, look, let's be effective. We know you didn't, if you're working with therapists, yeah, we know you didn't cause this problem, but you need to take care of it anyway, rather than, let your credit score be injured or waste your time, being resentful toward this, irresponsible roommate. Number five, new behaviors have to be learned in all relevant contexts. So new behavioral skills have got to be practiced in situations where they're needed, not just in the situation when they're first learned. So not just in therapy. That's a good place to start. Working as you're being coached by a therapist and you're learning some skills. It might be role playing in terms of asking others to do things for you or to get them to understand some of your limitations with your executive function impairments, while balancing that with your best efforts forward, to be a responsible adult. Um, you've got to practice the skills, just like so we have to be open to being a beginner. From the mindfulness language, we'd often talk about coming back to beginner's mind, just being willing, almost kind of reverting to a open, playful childhood perspective, if you will, just a willingness to do new things that are going to be difficult, um, or that you may not want to practice this because you may be forgetful. So again, this is where the accountability and support of a therapist, skills training group, other folks that you're willing to let in on what you're doing can be helpful to you to practice and to put it to use. And then when you come back and you share your skills practice with your individual therapist or your skills training group, if you happen to be in DBT, you can get some helpful feedback there, and that can be reinforcing also. But again, you have to practice mindfulness daily. You have to practice various distress tolerance skills daily at the moment you need it. And then we need to find ways to, for the ADHD adult, we need ways to figure out how can we help remind ourselves. Because in case you missed the opening episodes or any other details here, I am also an ADHD adult. So I will say we, they, and so on, again, interchangeably, because I understand these struggles. They are very difficult. It's difficult to change these, patterns, and it's also difficult to get started. And sometimes we don't clue in on that, so we may need to use like sticky notes and so on. But I'm kind of getting into the how. Back to the assumption. So number six, all behaviors, meaning all actions, thoughts, and emotions are cause. And there is always a cause or set of causes or actions, thoughts, and feelings, even when we're unaware of it. These don't come out of nowhere. I mean, it may be experientially, maybe in terms of perception or awareness. We feel like we're getting hit by a ton of bricks or blindsided by something. Uh, there are biochemical changes in our bodies when we're experiencing various emotions, thoughts that we have. And there's this big long chain of cause and effect that's been happening since we were, well, at least since we were born. So we're affected by a lot of um, elements and phenomena for sure. This is there is always a cause And this is important because then we can let go of some of the self judgments that we get caught up in, like, I'm just so crazy, I'm just so lazy, I'm just too immature, or here I go again with that thought or that emotion. um, we can move away from that and say, maybe I don't know what's causing it. That's okay. I can just live with kind of a, even it's a little uncomfortable, kind of an agnosticism, perhaps, like I just can't know, because I want to turn toward what's effective in this particular moment. And this leads into our final assumption I want to share with you. Number seven, figuring out and changing the causes of behavior work better than judging and blaming, right? It's true for all of us. This is a great DBT assumption. I'm so glad that Dr. Linehan and her colleagues gave this to us. But judging and blaming yourself or others, it's easy. It's way easier to kind of get up into that, right? And it can be a form of avoidance, rather than doing shifting toward the work on developing skill or mitigating my executive function impairments. Like, if only my parents had been more understanding, or if only my spouse was kinder and compassionate. They just don't get me. If only they could just read my mind and know my needs, I would have to tell them all kinds of things like that. But then we don't change our behaviors. So if we want to create change in our world around us, ourselves, we have to change the chain of events that cause unwanted behaviors and outcomes. So rather than getting stuck and mired in, judgment, kind of an analytical left brain, uh, you know, critique that goes on and on and on and on, that may contribute to rumination, which then will likely lead to some kind of you know impairment through anxiety. But when we can move to more functional assessment of our own behaviors in a way where we're both balancing like acceptance and compassion for ourselves, and benevolent demanding from therapists or others, but also a self-imposed benevolent demanding, we can push into, okay. For instance, if I can't find my keys, I know this is going to be a real simplistic example. A lot of us out there may even say, "Yeah, yeah, I know," or "I've heard it before." Or, if you're not an ADHD person, you might be like, "Oh, come on, Scott, that's just so common sense. Why are we even talking about this?" Well, in all reality, if we want to know where our car keys are, or with our house keys, we probably ought to have a tray or a hook on a wall where we develop a habit of, when we come home, that's where they go right away. We just put it there and we just over and over and over again. Why? Why would we want to do that? Because then we will know where our keys are when we need to leave. Whether that's for, I'm leaving and I woke up and I'm blurry eyed, I'm getting a little sip of coffee. Where are my keys? Oh, they're on the hook. They're on the hook by the kitchen sink. They're on the hook by the front door. They're in that special dish where that's the only thing that goes there. And it's the only place that goes. I put them away. I don't put them down. Right. So I put them where they should go. I know where they are. This will limit chains of subsequent chaos, right? Then you're not scrambling around the house going, "Oh no, where oh, I left them in the pocket of the shorts from yesterday's walk along the beach, or the outing we went on. Oh no, where are those? Are they in the laundry basket? Are they under the bed? Oh no." And then we have intense emotional reactions that further, you know, intensifies the emotional and cognitive chaos of the moment, and it could lead to, again, come back into a cycle of self judgment. Oh, I'm just so dumb, and why didn't I put it away? I really should get a hook, and so on. Right? You know, let go of all judgment. If you're in that pattern, it's kind of like, hey, you know what? I'm going to put a hook on the near the door, at the front, or maybe it's our hook for keys is over by our kitchen sink at our home. And that works 95% of the time. The 5% of the time it doesn't work, or the 5% of the time where I don't put the keys there. So I'm not going to sit over here and try to come off as like some ADHD saint. It's, every now and then we forget we're still fallible, right? Okay, so real quick, I'm gonna reread these assumptions here as kind of groundwork for subsequent coming posts here on our Substack. But number one, again, remember, all ADHD adults, you're doing the best that you can at any given moment, right? You are. Number two, you ADHD adults out there, my cohort, you want to do better. You need to do better. And the fact that you are doing these, watching this or reading or going to therapy, that pretty much proves that. Thirdly, us ADHD, us, can we get some, let me get some grammar here. ADHD adults need to do better, work harder, and be more motivated to change. And so we all need to figure that out. And we can do that with the right resources and help. Number four, ADHD adults may not have caused all of their own problems, but they must solve them anyway. Number five, new behavior has to be learned in all relevant contexts, not just in the therapy setting. That's a good start, but let's make sure you practice, practice, practice. All behaviors includes actions, thoughts, and emotions are caused. Get out of the judgment. Speaking of getting out of the judgment, number seven, finding out and changing the cause of behavior works better than judging or blaming. It's a great set of uh, assumptions. I'll post those as bullet points with on Substack, so those of you who are Substack followers, can have that, and that'll be it for a couple of weeks before it moves behind the paywall. So I hope that'll be helpful to you, kind of laying the groundwork for that. Again, we welcome the comments, private messaging if you want to, and we also are going to, on this particular entry, also will welcome, outreach for questions or ideas you have about what you'd like to hear about in the adapting dialectical behavior therapy for adult ADHD for future entries, because we want to be helpful to whoever comes to listen and participate. So thank you for watching this, whether you're following it up, but I do hope you will always follow, perhaps subscribe. And until next time, I'll say be mindful out there. Scott Spradlin signing off for now.